I have a pleasure to have with us Andrea Adamo, CEO and founder of Zaiput Flow Technologies, and he will speak about something different. So starting flow by leveraging your batch assets. So I know there's something new came out yesterday. So Andrea, let us hear from you. What are the news?
Hello, Gail. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining for this presentation. So I'll start providing a very brief introduction of Zaiput, what we've been doing, just to set the stage, and then I want to share about new work and new directions that we have taken as a company, but also we have seen people requesting. Zaiput is started as an MIT spin-out to commercialize innovation in flow chemistry. Now we have a product line for separation technology in flow chemistry, both liquid and gas liquid, applications and products in the space of complex extraction, multi-stage operation, and also devices for pressure control. We are committed to excellence, and we hope to improve society through engineering. So as a brief timeline, Zaiput has started almost a year ago with laboratory devices, and then our story essentially follows the entire growth of the field, bigger devices, so that you can take your process from the lab to the pilot plant and eventually in production. And recently, despite the challenges that everyone has experienced with the pandemics, we have kept on growing, and we have now European representative, Mr. Lorenzo Gazzola, that brings a lot of energy and quality to the team and to all our people in Europe. This highlights our presence, and our strongholds are in the Americas and Europe, and in Asia we are present through distributors. But now let's get to the technical part. So when people think of flow chemistry, they have typically the driver for adoption of the technology is a challenge that they experience on the chemistry domain. So there are the usual suspects, the fast reactions, the very exothermic reactions, cases where you need very fast mixing. All of these are very good cases to consider running your reaction in flow. What I want to argue over here, however, is that it's enough to have a process challenge as a driver to consider looking at different approaches. And I would speak in general about continuous flow-based approaches or technologies as opposed to flow chemistry only. Because the reality is that people have to address a process that hinges on chemistry but has several steps. And so it's really the entire process that can bring other challenges that may or may not be chemistry specific. And so in order to get to this, I have to give you a little bit of background on our core technology and also speak about our legacy application and effort. So the way that we started operating in flow was this working with this idea that you want to go from reagents to products in a continuously seamless way. And people had been working on reactive steps, mainly the gray ones, or represented by the gray pieces, and inline workup, inline liquid-to-liquid extraction capabilities was lagging behind. And so the idea was to bring this capability so that you can have seamless integration and get closer to the paradigm and promises of continuous manufacturing. And so this has actually happened for real. The way that Zaiput has been pursuing it is through devices that look like this when operated. You would feed a biphasic stream, in this case is water in red and toluene in clear, and the device continuously separates it. So if you're coming out of a reactor and you need to do an extraction, now you just have to pump in the second phase. They will mix in a tube in a line and then get separated out. And we've been doing this by using different approaches than were presented in the past. Traditionally, people have leveraged gravity. We use surface forces and use a porous membrane inside. One phase will have affinity, meaning we'll like the membrane, we'll wet it, the other one will be repelled. By controlling pressure conditions, we can push only one through and retain the other. And that's how we do separation. In order to visualize so that this idea of wetting becomes real, here shows a little example of what happens if you put water on. The first one is hydrophobic, the second one is hydrophilic. So in the first one, water is fully repelled. In the second one, water likes the material and essentially wets it. And so this has proven to be quite successful, very successful, I should say. And so the device was scaled through different sizes so that the experimenter can go from lab activities to production. And actually, we are working on an even larger device that would take us to about 40 liters per minute or 2,000 liters per hour in order to address even larger throughputs that people would like to deal with in the plant. And so the functionality is continuous operation with the ability to separate emulsions, not only liquid-liquid, but also gas-liquid, density insensitive, so you can separate things that have identical density, and you can quickly scale up. Other features stem from the engineering of the design. What I would note is a very small internal volume. Now, I am quite close to introducing the legacy approach that we've had so far. This is one of the many examples that have been presented. Specifically, this is from the work of Professor Kappe, that has been working with this idea of making in situ, producing in situ nasty reagents that would be difficult to handle otherwise. So this is an example of cyanogen bromide. Inline separation turns out to be very convenient because offers a very safe operation, very small internal volume, quickly process your stream, and then take it to the chemist that you had in mind to carry out. Again, there's a variety of these examples carried out both in academia and published and industrial settings. But now this is really to set the stage for some new ideas. So what we have seen is actually growing of hybrid applications, batch plus continuous. That's what we refer to with hybrid. So some new ideas or new problems or new approaches always start with a problem. So what is the problem that people would like to address? What we've seen is that in batch-based approach, which is typically gravity-driven, people start with a batch reactor, they carry out their chemistry, and when their chemistry is followed by an extraction, they're actually using only half of the reactor because they need the other half to put the extraction solvent. So this is very commonly done everywhere in the lab, in the plant. It's commonplace, but if you think about it, you are sacrificing half of your installed capacity just because you have an extraction. And so if you were able to do the extraction a different way, you would actually be doubling your installed capacity. It's already installed. You will be doubling what you can leverage. Other issue, sometimes people have multiple extractions to carry out. People call them in the chemist jargon washes or backwashes. In regulator fields, there's no way to cut corners, so maybe 2, maybe 3, and they are done sequentially. So if you have 2 of these, it's going to take twice the time, and if you have 3, it's going to take 3 times the time. And so in the time domain, this is really time killer. Third set of issues, emulsions, namely slow to settle systems. What we have seen is that people will invest a large amount of time to make sure that the chemistry that they're using, the composition of their liquid-liquid extraction is such as they're not going to get an emulsion, because that would be a time killer in the plant. They are also spending a lot of time to optimize the mixing so that you don't mix too much as to get into an emulsion that then will take forever to settle. So the question is there a way to get out of this emulsion and mixing challenges that people invest time with? And so this is what we are proposing and we have been proposing. So let's start with the first problem, the issue of half reactor being used. So we suggest a scheme of this type in which you have actually a full reactor in use, and you carry out your extraction in flow. So the solvent can be retrieved from the canister the provider, the shipper provided it with. So there's already a storage over there in the plant available. And so by engineering mass transfer, you can have this happen in a very small amount of space. And by leveraging continuous separation, all this can happen in a cart, actually. And so you are ready to move to the next stage, and you're leveraging your full reactor capacity. But this is an important step. So let's look at it in more detail. So what do people do in a batch extraction? They will start with the ready chemical, reaction is already done, and they take some time for the addition of the extraction solvent. Then they start mixing because they have to have the extraction process, mass transfer between the two taking place. Then they will stop the mixer and wait because the phases have to settle. And then they will finally start draining the bottom and try to get the so-called phase cut. So stop the drain when you see you've reached the interface between the two. The term in the industry is don't miss the phase cut again. So if you look at it in the time domain, for the sake of argument, a 1,000-liter reactor, very common in many applications, give or take 30 minutes for addition, 20 to 30 at least for mixing. You cannot go too fast, otherwise you emulsify. Wait 20 to 40 minutes, a little bit longer if the plant engineer wants to be really sure. Again, 20 to 40 for the drain, depending on the specific case. So it's about 2 hours at the very least, likely more. Now, how does this concept translate in a flow domain? So in a flow domain, the concept of addition is actually changed because you have simultaneous pumping of your process solution and your extraction solvent at the same time. The notion of mixing is also completely different because you can have engineered mixing that is now decoupled for separation. So I'll have another slide on this to exemplify, but the key idea first is that you don't have to mix a little so that you can actually separate. You can mix hard and get your extraction done very quickly because you are leveraging a different approach for separation that will separate even if things are emulsified. Waiting, also the notion of waiting makes no sense in a flow context. So this is irrelevant over here. And so is actually phase cut because you don't need the operator that looks through the window and waits for the different phase to come in and close the valve. The phase cut is kind of automatic, is inherently happening inside a flow-based separator. And so if you look at this in the time domain, it was more than 2 hours for batch. So you can get below 1 hour actually if you're working at 2,000 liters per minute, which is the separator that we are delivering at the end of the year. But what do you do now? So before showing what you can do today, I want to spend another minute to tell you about engineered mixing. So we are not developing here new technology. We are using static mixers together with some length of tubing to provide extra residence time. So when you send the two phases to the mixer, it will break it down into droplets, and the remaining tubing would allow for essentially diffusion to take place so that you get your mass transfer. So we developed a model to systematically look at a large number of conditions and have quick sizing charts. So essentially, you look at the flow rate of your system, you look at the diffusivity, the guide that we have will tell you how to calculate the diffusivity, and you see how many units, how many mixing units you have to use. So if it says 3 mixing units, it means that this piece of static mixer plus tubing, you just have to cascade 3 of them in series, and you are sure that at the end of these 3 pieces of mixing, you have achieved mass transfer. So the reason this is important, we're not inventing new theory over here. We are just applying it and making quick sizing charts. The reason this is important is because it saves time on the plant. You have a Zaiput assembly with pumps, mixers, and separators. You adjust the number of mixers for your case. You're good to go. So this is how it looks like. We called it ZFOX, Zaiput operated liquid-liquid extraction platform. And so this is available, this is real. We have already some in the field at the 200 liters per hour scale. What you see here is the Zaiput separators. There are pumps in the back here. These are the feed lines that you would connect with the reactors that you have on your plant. And this is the mixing coil. In this case, we needed a little longer one. This specific application also was benefiting of an inline filter. And then you go through the separator. And from these two ports, you'll collect out your aqueous and your organic. And of course, you have little electronics with a nice touch screen so that you can operate easily the device. So this is carried out with our SEP 3000 device that has been out in the field already for some time, which gives about 200 liters an hour. And we are going one order of magnitude larger sometime at the end of the year. But so what we were suggesting here is to address batch issues. So you can take this, since it has wheels, you can take it wherever you need it in the plant. This probably is going to be a pilot plant. And you'll leverage a full reactor. But if you have multiple extractions to wash, then all you need is to modify a little bit the connections and actually use two separators in line and add another pump. And so what happens is now that instead of doing things sequentially in a time domain, one batch wash, one another batch wash, you can do this sequentially in a flow context, which means in series. So two washes get done at the same time it takes for one. And so if this, by the way, goes back to the early example, it's 2 hours for a single wash. It would be at least 4 for two. You do 2 washes in 1 hour. So tremendous time saving together with the recovered productivity, which actually we think it's the more interesting part for many applications at the production setting. Last but not least, separation of emulsions. So why do I make the argument that these continuous separators can be effective with emulsion? So the cartoon explains it. So the dashed line represents the separator membrane. Usually an emulsion will have a dispersed phase in a continuous matrix. So the left one will be droplets of water in a continuous organic phase. So as the flow travels in front of the membrane, the organic gets out and the aqueous is pushed to coalesce. And so that's why you can be very efficient. If you have the opposite, the organic in aqueous, all you have to do is use an hydrophilic membrane. Water goes out, the organic will coalesce. And so to represent this a little bit better, this is an example where you have a brown mixture, which is an aqueous plus organic. Both streams were dyed, one in red and one in blue. And they're well shaken in the steering plate over here, which is still moving, so conditions are constant. Feed them to the device, get out your nice blue stream, nice red stream, fully separated. And so I think I'm getting close to the the amount of time that was allocated, and close to the end of this presentation. So what I hope is that I have managed to share this idea that you need a process problem. So batch chemistry can be a very good starting point to get into flow, get into a continuous approach if you have other problems, in this case of the extractive and separation nature. What continuous liquid-liquid extraction brings, in our opinion, to the process is, in terms of benefits, is doubling the productivity of the assets you have already installed and paid for. Decouple mass transfer for separation, solve your emulsion challenges. I thank you for your attention. I hope you have questions for me. You can always reach me at my email over there, through the portal or through our website. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea. So good news, new news. So it's incredible. But has this approach already been used, or you're the first one in the world about this separation?
So thank you, guys. This is a great question. So yes, the device has been used. While we waited for the Achema Pulse as an opportunity to have a little bit more formal launch of the product. You know, this presentation and newsletter yesterday, we actually have been working with some clients to test the platform and make sure that that addresses what the needs in the way it's intended to. I'll tell you more. Some of these ideas actually came from feedback that we received over time, working in the extraction space. So it's not Zaiput that wants to push it into the market. It was actually people that asked if we could address problems in this way. So the answer is yes, we have a number of examples.
Great, great. So there are some questions coming from the audience. They're asking, what is the driving force for separation? And does it handle particles?
Yes, so the driving force for separation at the local scale is actually surface forces. Is this idea that the wetting phase likes the membrane will spread over. And we have a small pressure difference inside that makes sure that only the wetting phase goes through and the other one cannot be pushed. In terms of overall device energy cost, so to speak, so this separation is paid for by a little bit of pressure drop to the device. This pressure drop is very small. It's in the order of 1/5 of a bar to have a reference. Actually, in cases where energy matters a lot, our solution seems to be the most competitive in energy terms. Regarding the use of particles, it really depends on where the particles are. Let's say you were to put sand in your stream. Sand will not stick to the PTFE membrane, so gets carried away with the aqueous. If you have a solid that may stick or is in the organic, then if it is a little, you just live with it and change the membranes. If it is a larger amount, either filtration or going to an hydrophilic membrane are typically the way people will deal with this. Membranes are actually low cost. They are easy to replace. So a lot of people will just have scheduled maintenance because the rate at which membrane will foul is the same scales also from lab to production, if the streams are about the same.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I actually we're asking about the membrane lifetime and actually the compatibility of these membrane materials. So,
yes. So the membranes are made in PTFE. We use membranes that are made for microfiltration applications, and we have selected those that are the best for these applications. So the membranes are pure PTFE. It's pure material. It's pharmaceutical grade. So from the stability standpoint, they are excellent. Never observed any issue. From the lifetime perspective, the honest answer is depends what you put inside. If you put mud, the membrane will last a few seconds. So really lifetime, it's application specific. The good and important thing is that you will understand it already at the lab scale. If your device lasts for a few days, the device have a scaling factor, all of them. So when you apply the scaling factor to your flow rates, you know exactly what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then the specific approach will depend on the case, what the plant engineer prefers. Some people will have scheduled maintenance. Some people will have 2 units in parallel and switch out for maintenance. Some people will ask for sensors so that they can monitor and take action before. In most instances, it's something that is very easy to deal with. Of course, if you have a very large amount of solids, it needs a little bit more investigation.
Okay, so I think it's time to end this slot. Thanks, Andrea, for being with us once again, and we hope to see each other in person soon. And good luck with the new technology.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you and bye to all of you.
Take care.